Hello, one and all, and welcome back to the Brothers Grimdark. It's Tyranid Day again, one of my favorite days, and we're talking about one of my favorite Tyranid units. And today it's one of my favorite big bugs. It's the Haruspex. Slightly unusual guy, I think not one you see maybe in every single list out there, but I really like him. I think he's a lot of fun, and I'm going to tell you why. First off, he was actually one of the first Tyranid models I painted. I bought the Christmas Battle Box whenever that came out, which had like a Hive Tyrant, Gargoyles, Hive Guard, probably some Gaunts, Gene Stealers, but one of the big selling points to me is it came with the Haruspex. You can also build them as the Exocrine. But I think the Haruspex is a really just horrifically cool model. That enormous gob on him, the big shovelly claws. He has a very sort of Beetle-esque look to him, which is a little bit different. For Tyranids, I feel like he really leans more into that bug kind of look, and I just think it's a really fantastically designed model. I know it's not everybody's favorite, but I think he's very cool. The big tongue coming out, snatching people. It's a hilarious model. It's very silly, but I do like him a lot. So yeah, he was one of the first models I painted for my Tyranids. So he was one of the early tests of kind of some of the different paint schemes I was trying out. And I was really happy with how he came out. He ended up being the basis for most of my larger Tyranids in terms of like how I go about painting those. He's also one I've updated over time. One thing I tried out later on was sort of using different glues and things to do the sort of saliva sort of technique on some of my larger bugs. So he was one of the testers for that. So he's had a little bit of an upgrade over time to make him even more gross with all like saliva and stuff coming out of his gob. Yeah, that's kind of him from a modeling perspective at least. Again, he's a little bit different from the rest of my army in terms of like, he's obviously not hiding. He is just out there to be a big tank, and he just roams across the table, taking out whatever big objects are in front of him. He's an equivalent of a sort of distraction Carnifex type thing, but very cool. He's a very powerful model. In terms of his stats, he's toughness 8, which is actually relatively rare in the Tyranid books. A lot of toughness 6, toughness 7 stuff, but toughness 8 is really nice, and 15 wounds and a 2-up save. So he's pretty beefy for a Tyranid monster. He takes a fair bit to take down. On top of that, there's stratagems you can put on him, like Indomitable Monstrosity, so you can't be wounded on anything less than a 4, 5, or 6. So even if he comes up against like some big anti-tank weapons, he can still shrug those off pretty well. So he's very tough. So I quite like him from that perspective because he can just soak up a bunch of ammunition from the enemy if I need to. He can, as I said, that classic sort of distraction Carnifex sort of role. He has his big old gob, which is kind of funny because it ignores lookout, sir. So occasionally you can like snipe people with him. Which is kind of funny. It's not a particularly great weapon, but it is just funny to say that he went and licked somebody for fun. And it's AP -3, damage 3, so maybe it'll do something if it ever actually gets to happen, but it doesn't come off all that often. But one of the main reasons I really like him is his dual weapon profiles. He's obviously got his mouth and he has the shoveling claws. So his Ravenous Maw is only AP -1, damage 2, but he makes 3 hit rolls for every attack. So he is getting up to 15 attacks by himself at that point. I only get AP -1, but damage 2. So still, he's going to put the hurt on some things with that mouth. But he also, so if he comes across a bunch of like decent infantry sort of things, he can deal with those. But if he comes up against a tank or another vehicle or a Wraith Lord, as Lyndon knows, he can do double strength, AP -C, damage D3 plus 3. So he is then strength 14, and because he's Behemoth, the way I tend to run my Tyranids, that makes him strength 15 when he charges or is charged. So he's gonna deal with quite a lot of big, tough vehicles, and damage D3 plus 3 as well is pretty solid. So I love the versatility from him. He's quite an expensive unit for Tyranids, but he can go up against infantry, he can go up against big tanks, and he can soak up a ton of firepower for you as well. So those are the sort of like relatively sensible reasons I quite like to run him. On top of that, he's just like a cool model and I just like the look of him. But he's also the vehicle for probably two of my favorite stratagems in the Tyranid Codex. Again, these are not the most competitive things necessarily, but I think they're really, really fun. The first one is Trampling Charge. So because he has the Horned Chitin, whatever it's called, when he charges, he does mortal wounds, which is cool. And he also has acid blood. So when people do wounds to him, he can do wounds back that way as well. So even when he's being killed, he's still bleeding on things and causing all sorts of destruction that way too. So he's just really funny. He's just a really unique unit. And kind of just a nice way to kind of play some more fun stratagems. He also regens wounds, I think, when he does damage to things too, so you can get him back up to strength a little bit that way. I do like that they've streamlined him a little bit from the previous codex. He used to also be really funny, but the rules were kind of all over the place. So he's a lot more streamlined now. He's pretty versatile in terms of being both anti-infantry, anti-tank, and very tough. And you can do fun stratagem stuff to him. So, where can you go wrong? I think he's a really cool unit. I think he's a lot of fun. Because he's so pricey, he's probably not going to be in my list every single game. I think there's better options out there for if you want to go pure anti-tank or pure anti-infantry. There's definitely other ways you can do that. But overall, he's just fun, and he's actually pretty decent, I think, too. So that's generally a theme across the whole Tyranid Codex, I would feel. Like, there are definitely some units which are crazy good, but I feel like you can't really go wrong with just about anything in this book, which is nice. You can build armies in a whole ton of different ways depending on the theme you want to go with, and just kind of how you want to play, or just what you want to bring that given day. So that's my Haruspex. That's why I like him. Said maybe a bit more of a niche choice for Tyranid players, but if you're running a Haruspex, please let me know. A bit of love for the Haruspex boys out there. And if you've got alternatives you think work much better, tell me about those as well down in the comments. Love to hear what you think. But yeah, that's my Haruspex. One of the chunkier lads in my army, and a little bit different, but yeah, hope you enjoyed that. And we'll be back again soon with another video from the Brothers Grimdark.